Bacta Tank contains adult language and discussions. If you're easily offended, do not continue.
We would be honored if you would join us.
How are you feeling? Your latest workups on your condition indicate that all damage has been reversed. Recovery is total. I believe you have been quite fortunate. No further thanks are necessary, Commander, but you are most welcome. It is my function and pleasure as a medical droid to help and heal human beings.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Hello everyone, welcome to Star Wars from the Bacta Tank. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good midnight? I don't know when people are listening.
And good luck.
And good luck. Yes, you have to sit through another hour of Star Wars from the Bacta Tank. Is that what you're alluding to, David, over there? Do I need to publicly shame you? Do I need to get out the whip sound effect and start beating you?
Need to get the bell out.
This is how I treat my Filipino. It's okay. I'm Mexican. I can say it. You also, we take turns. Sometimes you beat me and be like, hey, this is how I treat my Mexican.
This is how we treat minorities in general.
Yeah, here's a burrito, Mike. Go get it.
Go get it. Where's your sombrero?
Oh, now you went too far, Dave.
Too far for that?
Yeah, that's racist. All right, so today we are going to be discussing Star Wars Vader Dark Visions, a canon comic book limited series focusing on Darth Vader. When this was first announced, Dave, I was excited. If you remember during our live discussion on our regular Star Wars Bacta update show, we were both very giddy about it. The first bit of imagery from Greg Smallwood that was released was enough to get me stoked. It was Vader on top of a horse-type alien creature with an Imperial shield and a lightsaber.
It's very reminiscent of Frank Frazetta and, Death Dealer, that really dark art, like gothic art.
It was medieval as fuck.
Medieval, yeah.
Then, I think both of us lost interest when... Well, at least for me, I lost interest when I found out it was just going to be stories about Vader from the perspective of others, from randos, random encounters. I mean, I don't care about that. It just didn't seem like anything I wanted to read, especially because the two Vader Marvel series we had already got were very good up to this point.
Yes.
Like, very good. I mean, pushing the story... personal when it comes to Anakin, intimate stories that pushed our knowledge of Vader into new areas. Also into even better for us, because we're lore whores, also into new exploratory avenues of the Force. We were introduced to ideas that were very new to this new Disney canon.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was the thing about this whole bringing their own take on Star Wars canon was they had to actually do something unique, something to catch our eye, And at first, going back to this series with Vader Dark Visions, I was like you.
We were skeptical.
We were very skeptical because it's like, what can you do? What can you give us that we already don't know about Darth Vader?
And also, we were, I think, disappointed that the Sith Lord series was coming to an end. I was already upset that Kieran Gillen's series, the 2015 Vader series, ended, because I thought that was great. And that ended on issue, I want to say 19. And listen, I get it. I understand. There's only so many areas we can go into Vader's past without stepping
on toes.
Yes. So I understand that, but we were already disappointed. And we're like, okay, well, Dark Visions is happening.
And then you add to the fact about Chuck Wendig, and Wendig was supposed to actually be the writer for the new Darth Vader series, and then he got taken out.
So this was a replacement series,
This was
right?
the replacement series.
Yeah,
This
so
was,
that also left a bad taste
it
in a
left
lot of
bad
people's mouths.
taste in every comic book reader's mouth, because it was kind of like, there's more scandal with Star Wars.
Right.
Okay, here we go again, and they're just trying to push their agenda. They're just trying to do this. They took off the writer because he didn't play quote unquote ball with corporate.
Right.
And
Well, Chuck, I there was no love lost between me and Chuck
Oh,
Wendig.
there-
I mean, I think the guy did some pretty good work, but his toxic behavior on social media rivaled that of the fan base, and you just can't do that.
yeah, well, it's the thing at when people took the time to actually look into it and actually see what happened. Wendig, I'm a big supporter of a lot of writers, but Wendig went too far to the point that he's in the classification of Rian Johnson. Too much negativity. If you
Yeah.
lose the job, sorry, say your piece and just move on.
Yeah.
Move on to something else.
Yeah.
Don't harp at it. Don't hate on the fans. Don't make excuses. That's not your job. Your job is to be a writer, and
Right.
a creator.
Yeah, and I don't want to be too negative on this show, but yes, there was a lot of negative buzz surrounding this replacement title, I
Yeah.
guess you can call it. So excited at first with the imagery, then I wasn't, but then some controversy happened.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yes, with this.
And unfortunately, negativity followed after the release of Dark Visions #3. And maybe not negatively, or maybe not unfortunately. Maybe this actually helped propel the sales. Who knows? I'd love to see the financial statements or financial data on whether or not issue #3, if there was if there was a spike in sales. Because after the controversy hit social media, I was curious by
Yes.
some of the outrage, because there was a lot. There were claims of toxic masculinity, the demoralized depictions of a female character.
Attacks on fangirl imagery and stuff like that.
Right. I guess some people were saying that the writer of this comic was trying to draw parallels between the infatuation that some fangirls have with Kylo Ren.
Not just Kylo Ren, just villains in general.
Right. And we're going to get into that. Needless to say, I was intrigued because we are dealing with Disney here.
Yes.
So when this controversy followed, my interest is piqued, because I can't imagine in this day and age that Disney would allow anything of that sort to be published under their banners.
Yeah. And the thing is, this was like an old school type of media concept where everyone's heard this, controversy sells. And I'm also interested too to see if, like, what's the difference of the sale numbers and orders on the books after issue 3 came out.
Well, because Dave, I bought it.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, you know what? I was a little annoyed at first by various things because I just hate complainers. We complain a lot in this show, but it's more because we want more. We complain because we want more.
Yeah. it's
We don't
not-
complain about what we're getting because we want what we're getting. Is everything perfect? No.
Yeah.
But I get aggravated every time I go on social media and I see a fan, and I'm going to put air quotes, somebody who claims to be a fan hating on something Star Wars. When do you just admit that you're not a Star Wars fan any longer? Or maybe you never were.
Yeah.
So, or was, I should say. My interest, as I said, was piqued by all this. So again, unfortunately, controversy sometimes brings in the dough, right?
Uh-huh.
So needless to say, I purchased the trade paperback, and I was pleasantly surprised, Dave. I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did. When it comes to Vader stories, some might say that this was a stutter step, but I would disagree. It's a different type of character progression. It actually solidifies Vader's villain status, his villainy.
Yes.
Whereas some can argue in his own stories, the 2015 run as well as the 2017 run, I believe is when it started, the Sith Lords, you can argue that he at times becomes a bit of an anti-hero, which makes sense when you're dealing with a story that wants to take the Star Wars universe's biggest antagonist and tell a story from his perspective.
Yes.
Suddenly, from a literary standpoint, he's got to be written as the protagonist. At times, we find ourselves conflicted, we feel for him, and that's just good writing. There's
Yes.
nothing wrong with that. These stories are told from the perspective of others, though. That's what's now. Actually, let me backtrack. Jesus, I jumped ahead of my brain's moving too fast. But Dark Visions, they are stories told from the perspective of others.
Others, yes.
And they're not looking to sow seeds of empathy. They are simply designed to show you how others in different circumstances might view Vader.
Yeah, it's the series was designed to harken back to the old adage of Obi-Wan Kenobi from a certain point of view.
Exactly.
And that's the whole point about the series, is to show the character of Darth Vader from a different point of view, from someone who sees Vader as a hero, sees Vader as a romantic interest, stuff like that. And I was actually, whenever people do this, especially since today, because it's such a hot button topic among fan bases, should villains be brought to main character status? You see that with in regards to comics like DC Comics and Marvel, where they take the villains and they make them the main focus of
Right.
your story. Say like the Joker and,
Right, yeah.
and all that. With Darth Vader, it's the same way. We all want that character to be the main focus, but we have to be careful not to take away the bottom line of the character
fangs.
is
You don't
the
wanna take the fangs.
fangs. You
Yeah.
don't want to take the fangs out of him.
And Dave, that's a complaint that a lot of people were voicing especially when StarWars.com updated the bio of Vader about a year ago, and it said anti-hero. And we
Yes.
had a whole show about that. Scroll down on your feeds and you'll find it. I want to get into it again. He isn't an anti-hero officially. However, when you are the protagonist of your own story, you are kind of pushed into that literary, I want to say,
Title?
writing. Yes, literary title of the anti-hero. That's
Yeah.
how you can be described. But that isn't what Vader is. Vader's still the villain. And that's why I dig what they did here. Because, yes, there are a couple stories. One, I think, out of this 5-issue series that portrays him in a different light. But for the most part, you're getting people's perspectives on this villain of the universe, this guy that's infamous / famous. Some might view him as heroic, murderous, sadistic, an immovable force, an escape of sorts. It's not objective in the least.
Yes.
It's subjective.
It's subjective.
That's why it was fun to read. Life is not objective. Life is subjective. We are all products of circumstances brought on by upbringing, geopolitical experiences that help to form our personal ideology. So taking that into account, Dave, let's dig into each of these stories briefly. We're not going to spend 40 minutes on each issue. I know typically we actually do 45 to 60 minutes on an issue when we do a full discussion or one show just on one. But we are going to breeze through these, and we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each, what we like the most.
Yeah.
And we are probably going to spend a little bit of extra time on issue number 3, which is the controversial one, okay?
Yeah, and the thing that really does surprise me, that one thing I want to get across to a lot of our listeners right now is like how different each of these issues were, because I initially went into this with zero expectations. And I was actually expecting, it's going to be the same him-ha. He's a badass. He's a monster. And that's it.
Right. It was so much more than that.
It was so much more than that when
Yeah.
you actually read all 5 issues and take a look back and say, for one single writer, because this was written by one writer. I thought it was going to be done by 5 different writers.
And you know what? I'm okay with anthology series like that where they do have different writers, but I
Yeah.
felt like this was a good call having the same one because there was a theme here.
There's a theme.
There was a
going
theme that was very consistent throughout all 5 issues. All right, so Star Wars Vader Dark Visions is a canon comic book miniseries focusing on Darth Vader, of course. The series was written by Dennis Hollum and published by Marvel Comics. The first issue was published way back in March of this year, so we are behind. Who is Darth Vader? He has been many things: a Sith warrior, a commander, a destroyer. Darth Vader is, to many throughout the Galactic Empire, a symbol of fear and mysterious, otherworldly power. But there are some who have seen the Dark Lord in a different light. There are some corners of the galaxy so dark and desperate that even Vader can be a knight in shining armor.
Yes.
The first issue of a new Star Wars limited series was written, of course, by Dennis Hopeless. Hopeless. Why does he go by a nickname called Hopeless? Do you know anything about that?
I have no idea.
Okay, it keeps throwing me off. Dennis Hopeless Hollum sheds new light on the many sides of the galaxy's greatest villain. Thank you for emphasizing that. Villain, because that is what Vader is. And even in the stories, Dave, where the perspective switches to where he may be viewed as a hero, we, as the reader, know exactly what's happening, which is the fun part. We are in the know. Maybe this character doesn't know everything, but we know. We know you got lucky. You didn't get killed by him by just sheer luck.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about Dark Visions #1. In this first issue of the canon comic book miniseries Star Wars Vader Dark Visions, we see Vader crash land on a planet. And when this first happened, I was like, all right, here we go again. So how many times have we seen Vader crash land now in a book or a comic series?
Yeah.
Several times at this point.
Several times.
Now, this one is an interesting look at the sky gods. In this issue, you have this young man who has grown up in a stunted society because a wild beast has come to their planet, and for decades, maybe even centuries, I don't know.
Yeah.
They don't really specify.
They don't specify.
He has destroyed their way of life. He's killed, maimed, etc.
And he's just almost like a gigantic kaiju monster.
He
of
looks
some
like a
sort.
shark, right?
He looks the
Cross
size
between
of
a
him is-
shark and Rancor.
yeah. And at first I was like going, is this like a Sith monster or a Sith beast of some kind? Because remember, in a lot of things we talk that in Star Wars that we've covered, it's talked about legendary beasts. And I thought that this was one of them.
Yeah. Do you think this shark creature ever had children, like maybe offspring? That'd be dangerous, huh?
That would be.
Yeah, they would never escape then. Am I right? Do you think maybe this song would have been a composer's choice?
Oh yeah.
I think this would have been a good choice to have. If this was made into like a live action film.
Into a live action film. Oh God.
No?
And see, this is how you take fangs out of a monster.
Yeah, Vader's just coming down there
Oh my God,
while
that'd
he's
be so
okay.
hilarious.
Now, if Tarantino directed a Vader series, I can see this song playing while he's killing people.
Well, he's killing people.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, this creature looked like a shark. Yeah, that was a reach. I'll admit it. That was a reach, Dave.
But it was a good reach. It was a good reach.
So where was I, Dave? I completely threw myself off. Oh, okay. So these indigenous folk are unable to live above ground in fear that they will be killed and are forced to live in tunnels below the surface. In a bizarre turn of fate, and this is where it gets interesting and fun. This is one of those issues that I feel not entirely socially relevant. I feel like other issues in this series, you can definitely derive some social meaning. This one was just a fun twist of perspective. Vader crash lands literally on top of this beast. And what unfolds is witnessed by the young man of this story. He sees Vader destroy this ravenous creature. A huge battle ensues of epic, pulpy proportions. fucking cool. And of course is the victor. Now this young man now sees Vader as their savior.
Yeah.
A god from the sky here to rescue them. The story, as I said, is quite simple, Dave, but what the takeaway for me, because there is a takeaway from every issue, even if the story isn't entirely groundbreaking, there is something that is. And in this particular issue, for me, it was the way this was scripted out by Dennis Hallam. And of course, Paolo Vianelli, and how he took Dennis's script and captured Darth Vader's through a heroic lens.
Yeah, that was the biggest takeaway for me for this particular story, because he was able to tell a story about a villain but make the villain look heroic. But then my favorite part about this issue was in the very end, Darth Vader looks at the kid and says, "You should not thank me." And then you see the ignition, and he ignites his lightsaber.
Yeah.
And I'm like going, I got reminded of like Revenge of the Sith. What are we gonna do, Master Anakin?
Oh, yeah.
Shing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, he's gonna kill younglings again.
Yeah, that was definitely what they were trying to allude to.
Yeah.
They were trying to draw that connection.
And that's just a great chemistry between writer and artist, because
It
the
really is.
artist gets it. The artist understands. Okay,
And
let's
that
make
doesn't
this
always
villain-
happen.
Yeah.
That really doesn't always happen.
This was an example of like good chemistry between a writer and an artist, where the artist understands what the writer's trying to get to, and then understanding tones and beats, particularly like rhythm and beats in comics. Here, okay, we're going to make him look hero. Stop. Remind the audience, hey, this is Darth Vader. It's a villain.
Yeah.
And then you have to remind them that basically, no, he will kill this child if he so deems it necessary.
There is one panel that, well, first off, every single panel with Vader in it was drawn in a way that we have not seen Vader portrayed. That's why I loved this issue.
Yeah.
Typically, we get a lot of the go-to villain illustrations, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, however, the ones that we had in this issue turned Vader into this pulp god.
Yes.
I mean, literally, there were panels that looked like they were ripped from the pages of an Edgar Rice Burroughs novel.
Yeah. It made Darth Vader look so much epic in scale.
Well, he looked like a hero.
He
There were a
looks like
lot
a
of those
hero.
classic hero shots, especially if you look at some of the early concept work from Ralph McQuarrie and the stuff that he did for Luke Skywalker, with the open robe and the muscles bulging, the pecs and the shredded abs, and he has that sword like Conan up into the sky.
Yeah.
That is what we got with Vader, and we very rarely get that with Vader because he's not the hero.
He's not the hero.
However, in this particular issue, from the perspective of this young boy, Vader was very much the hero.
Yes, because to the boy, Vader is taking on something that the boy believes is the monster, or something bigger and badder. And then there's Darth Vader doing the epic Conan things. I mean, I literally got the Conan vibe when you see the initial fight between Darth Vader and this creature, and the creature takes up 80% of the frame, and there's little tiny Darth Vader jumping at him. And it's very reminiscent of how Conan was always in all of like Edgar Rice's Burroughs like novels. When you look at the cover, Conan's always pictured tiny in scale, and then the monster is like 1,000 times bigger than him.
There's an image I'm sharing right now on our video feed, and it's one of my favorite shots. And I'm going to post this within the on-demand webpage as well. When the show goes on demand, I'll embed various images from the comic so people can appreciate some of the artwork. But if you're watching on YouTube, you can already enjoy it.
Yes.
I mean, please go buy the comic as well. So, loved it. I felt like overall it was exceptional work, especially, again, from the scripting side, working with Paolo Vianelli.
Mm-hmm.
Good job all the
Good
way.
job.
Good
Good
job
job
all the
on
way
that.
around.
In this particular issue.
All right, so Dark Visions 2 is the second issue. And this one was interesting
This
as
one
well.
was actually for me. This was the fun one
I agree.
because, like, for me, it answers the question: what all of the generals and the subordinates under Darth Vader view him as, and it's an interesting take because normally everyone thinks of the emotion of fear, as kind of like a negative, but in a lot of ways, the way fear is portrayed here, it's almost like a positive because it forces the subordinates to do what has to be done.
Yeah, it's a positive. Okay, Dave, man, I can tell that in another life or maybe someday in the near future, you're going to be
I'm going to be a vicious tyrant.
You're going to be a dictator because that's. I
But
cannot believe you just praised Vader's
because it's
actions
very true.
as a leader. Like, well, it's very motivating. Like
It's
when,
very
when,
motivating.
When your life is on the line and you might get killed, it's very motivating.
Very motivating.
I'm very pro this.
Do you want me to cut your head off? No? Then go do your job.
Jesus Christ.
Go do your job. And I was like,
I'd hate to hear your reasoning behind why the Holocaust was a good thing. Please don't get into it.
hey, that was messy. That was messy.
I would have done it differently.
I would have done it differently. First off, keep
Okay,
it quiet.
okay, all right. Jesus Christ. Nothing David says is
It's supported by Rain Vantage.
yeah. Also, he might be mentally challenged, and he doesn't have a
A moral
coherent.
compass.
Yes, exactly.
But, like, honestly, dude, it's one of those things that everyone constantly makes fun of in Star Wars. It was like, oh, he's just gonna force choke everybody, like anybody under him, and because of that one scene that starts it all in New Hope, when he's like strangling the guy and says, "Your lack of faith disturbs me."
Yeah.
And it's like, because of that scene, everybody since then portrays Darth Vader treating his insubordinates with fear. They are afraid of him, and they do the things they do because of that fear, and that fear drives them to do crazy things.
Yes. So the setup, Dave, is to command an Imperial destroyer is a coveted position, but with such great responsibility comes grave consequences if you fail your mission. How
Yep.
far will one officer go to spare himself from the judgment of Darth Vader? Now, the artwork in this one was a different individual. This was illustrated by Brian Level, but was scripted, written by Dennis Hallam as well.
Yes.
Now, this was another one that was not character-driven, but more driven by the visuals.
Visuals and the concept behind it.
Yes, similar to Dark Visions 1, we get excellent scripting from Hallam. The illustrations from Brian Level depict a commander that is driven by a sense of mad phobia,
Yes.
brought on by a traumatic event. And this is one of those issues I feel is a little more, I guess you could say, socially relevant. You can derive some meaning within these pages. The commander witnessed the brutality of Vader firsthand. It partially drove him mad,
Well,
perhaps with a mixture of PTSD of
Yes.
sorts. And you get all this from Brian's artwork. The panels are confining and elusive. It conveys the idea of fear and paranoia. Dave, if you go back through those issues, if you didn't pick up on it, and potential readers out there, when they read Visions #2, you'll realize that a lot of the pages, especially the ones where the commander is frightened, they're incomplete.
Yes.
For example, the actual picture, the image doesn't take up the complete page. The panels are narrowed.
Yes, and there's a certain symmetry to every page. Like, all of a sudden, if he's calm and collected, suddenly, all the panels are the proper rectangular shape. And then all of a sudden, like, when he starts panicking and things go bad, suddenly, the rectangle turns into kind of like a broken mirror, and you see the little chips hanging off of it. And it's almost like by the end of it, when you get to the very end, and the panel page where he's just lost it is just broken completely.
I kind of feel bad for
completely
him.
up.
I'm not going to lie. I kind of was disturbed. And this is where the disturbing part of Dark Visions starts to take root, because a lot of people may think, oh, this is a Disney published comic. No. Well, it is, but don't get it twisted, because the first issue was just a taste. It was like, oh,
Yes.
guys, hey, look, this is a nice little cool story. A kid views Darth Vader as a hero. Whee! That was just to get us hooked. That was to get us to keep reading, because as we progress, these stories get more and more, I want to say, disturbing. And this is one of them, because the way it ends, you can see in this issue how truly terrified, and the artwork by Brian Level is top notch. The way he was able to capture this fear from the commander, that ultimately ends in his murder. Darth Vader goes aboard a Star Destroyer that is literally in shambles. It's burning. It is going to blow up. Doesn't stop Vader from getting his punishment, or from going to deliver and dole out punishment. He gets on board, and it ends with failure. What is it? Failure is not an option?
No, failure unacceptable.
Failure unacceptable. And all of this guy's fears just comes to a head.
And the thing is like, it's almost like a really big crescendo to his madness. Like,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
my favorite page is when he decides to fly a Star Destroyer through the space worm, through the space worm's mouth.
Okay, and isn't that in itself, here, let me pull that up here on our feed. Isn't that in itself a little,
Over the top.
is it disturbing a little
It's
too?
disturbing.
The imagery is disturbing, right?
Yeah, because like it's so crazy. It's like this is what his
It's
fear has-
nightmarish, right?
It's nightmarish,
Yeah.
and it this is what drove him, and then this is how broken his mind is.
Yeah.
Where the fear has driven him to do something so ludicrous. And when you look at the page of the Star Destroyer going into the space worm's mouth, it's over the top crazy. Like, you're like going, I can't be seeing this.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
And then but the fact of the matter is, that's how bad his fear
Yeah.
of Darth Vader was.
I dig it. I think it was a great little vignette into Vader's. What's a good way of saying it? Vader's. Hold
Vader's
on.
effect.
Yes.
Vader's effect
effect on certain individuals.
And the thing that cracks me up the most about like this story in particular, if you as a Star Wars fan think about it, this is the difference. If you think about, if this was Anakin in Clone Wars, no one would actually feel this way about Anakin. And that,
Of course. I mean,
and
he
it-
wasn't bad yet.
and it shows the stark contrast between Anakin and Darth Vader as
Right.
an image.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Because remember, in Clone Wars, Anakin bred loyalty from the clones. Like all the clones. That one of my favorite moments in Rebels is like when Rex talks about watching the Jedis doing their thing, and it's almost like an inspiration type of thing.
Yeah.
And he tells Ezra about his time watching Anakin and Obi-Wan, and then you get to this, and it's like, for me, it's like, oh my god, this is still the same person.
Yeah.
It's still Anakin, but the contrast between Anakin and Darth Vader, one bred loyalty through inspiration, the other one bred loyalty through absolute fear.
Yeah, it's a good way to kind of highlight the ever evolving story and downfall of Anakin Skywalker.
Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, you're right. So, Dave, that takes us to the controversial one.
The one that
Vader
everyone talks about.
Dark Visions #3 is the third issue of Star Wars Vader Dark Visions. It was also written by Dennis Hollum and illustrated by David Lopez and Javi Pina. And the synopsis: the star-crossed lover, Darth Vader, a name that strikes fear in the hearts of countless across the galaxy. But there is one lonely heart that beats just for him. What is it like to be in love with Lord Vader? And what fate will befall one who is infatuated? That's the key word right there. Please focus on that word. What fate will befall the one who is infatuated? Which we can all agree, infatuation isn't good. That isn't a good thing. with the tall, dark mystery behind the mask. Okay, so this was the controversial issue that caused Dennis Hollum to crack.
Yes.
And I hope you have those tweets ready. Do you have them ready? Please
Yes,
tell
I
me
do.
you do. Okay, good. I believe he justified his work on social media.
He did. Because, like, honestly, and when you read it, it's a reaction based on.
We'll get to it. Hold on.
Yeah.
Just get them ready. He justified his work on social media, and I don't feel like he should have. Because I will be 100% honest, Dave. Okay? To me, this is by far the most groundbreaking Star Wars issue we've had in years. And I will tell you why. Everybody wants to go to the low-hanging fruit. Oh, it demoralized women. Oh, you put women in a negative light. The reason why I feel like this is the most groundbreaking Star Wars issue to date of the new era of Star Wars since Disney purchased Lucasfilm in 2012. It's because of its unapologetic, callous depiction of Darth Vader and its willingness to take the reader into the mind of a truly deranged individual, meaning the woman.
Mm-hmm.
Its willingness to explore mental illness, to show us that mental disorders are not exclusive to any one person. Many comic book stories, Dave, by design are about the larger than life. Captain America, Wolverine, Luke Skywalker, they can overcome anything.
Yes.
But here we have a story about a nurse, what most in society would call normal, a mundane existence, and the focus of a Marvel comic issue pertaining or dealing with Darth Vader. And we explore a very real issue that is not, as far as my knowledge goes, is not officially recognized, but is known within medical circles as OLD, obsessive love disorder, which has been connected with various other serious mental issues. It can be a part of different, more widely accepted issues like attachment disorder or borderline personality disorder. So without being overly preachy, Dave, I feel like this comic did a great did it let me backtrack. I feel like this comic did great at cracking open I want to make sure my words are very precise because I don't want people to misconstrue what I'm saying.
Yes.
I felt like this comic did a great job at cracking open a very real problem in America that does lead to death, suicide, and, oh yes, toxic relationships. The
Yes.
person who is obsessed has no idea what he or she deserves, and at times allow themselves, in certain circumstances, to remain in terrible relationships
Abusive
that
relationships.
end in death at times. Just like the disturbing, callous way this issue ended the story. And to be quite frank, is fucking genius. Vader murders the woman.
Yeah.
Murders her without saying a word. And then as he walks out of his chambers where she approaches him, he instructs his officers to get rid of this garbage. And the comic book issue ends. That is a fucking statement.
Yes.
And that is why I'm so upset with Dennis. I don't want people thinking I'm talking trash about him. I'm disappointed
I'm just
because I feel like he had a beautiful, relevant story, and by justifying it on social media and even downplaying, I feel like he even downplayed his message. In fact, I want you to read these messages, and we got into this. I want to say really in depth during a regular
show. Yeah, a regular
discussion
show.
a few weeks ago. So I don't want to linger too long, but just so it's stated officially, please go ahead and state some of his tweets and the complaints as well.
So there's two particular ones that stand out, and one tweet that he received. This was the person actually tweeting to him. It really feels like you were trying to say something about fangirls who empathize with villains like Anakin and Kylo Ren.
That's a low
Hanging fruit.
yes.
It's low hanging fruit. Dennis replies via Twitter and says, "That really wasn't my intention. I'm not here to police your read, but to me, it's about a person so beaten down and caged in by her fascist existence that she fantasizes about the only person in her world powerful enough to free her."
Okay. Now, I want to say something about that. I feel like that was him succumbing to pressure.
No,
that explanation, Dave. Okay, first off, when I read this comic, what I get is an intelligent author was trying to explore a very real issue, right?
Yes.
That remark does not reflect the writing of this issue.
It lowers the concept.
That it lowers the concept. I feel like he's pandering a bit, trying to possibly calm the waters.
Diffuse. He's trying
and
to
diffuse. And by diffusing, I feel like his words were poorly chosen. Because why would you explain your work in such a manner that actually, I want to say, strengthens the complaints? She needed to be rescued? This is a woman who was crazed, mentally ill.
Yeah. And
she needed to be that's not what I got from that she needed to be rescued, that she had such a lonely existence and she needed to be rescued by. I didn't get that at all. I got the fact that she was, first off, she's collecting bloody pieces that Vader left behind. She's mentally disturbed. And I'm not saying she's a good person either. I think she's also a bad person. This is a story where I don't think anybody is great.
Yes.
But it's also delving into a very real issue. People that suffer with OLD typically aren't great people to begin with. They're obsessive. They're compulsive.
Yeah. And like, by doing what he was doing, for me, it feels like when you try to try to explain your actions in regards to a low-hanging fruit type of question, it kind of ruins the message in the book, which honestly is something that every person should be comfortable enough to face on their own. Now, I understand mental health is something that basically a lot of people are afraid of. Hey, I know that. I've gone through that, and I see people go through that. I'm a major person who supports mental health, and I'm a major contributor to like supporting people trying to find mental health help.
Yeah.
But I also understand that that is the one subject in today's world, in today's society, that people do not want to face.
No, they're afraid of it.
They're afraid of it.
They're afraid of it. And that's why stories like this, Dave, don't go over well, because people don't want to actually sit down and read this because you know why? It makes them feel uncomfortable.
It makes them feel uncomfortable, and then their only action is to kind of reduce the meaning.
Right, because they're trying to decipher their feelings, because it did exactly what the writer wanted to do. It caused some waves. It made you to think. It made you to feel. Dave, I have watched some of the most gory TV shows, okay? I'm not a lightweight. And yet, at the end of this issue, I felt uncomfortable. That is art. That is fucking art. And to have Dennis try to justify his work, it just hurt me, because I'm like, dude, this is art, man, and you did it great. You did a fantastic.
You did your job.
You did your job. You
Yeah.
did a fantastic job with this. Don't even answer these people who, in my opinion, have such low IQs. They can't truly interpret your work.
Yeah.
And is that me being a bit of an elitist? Possibly. Not everybody can interpret and break down, works of art. But this is one. I feel like issue 3 it was a fucking huge home run, because it created discomfort.
And discussion.
Yes.
Discomfort and discussion.
And my only advice to Dennis, if he even cares, is, dude, don't ever explain your work, man.
Yeah.
You did a great job. Don't try to justify. There's going to be people that complain about everything. Don't wallow with people who are not smart enough to understand your message or your work.
And then the second tweet, basically to compound the problem with this issue, is another Twitter person basically I can't even see it, basically messaged him and said, please read my thread about the comic and how it takes a lot of tropes beloved by fangirls and portrays them in less flattering light.
That's not what it is. So maybe they have an issue. Maybe they have problems. The fact that they see themselves as a deranged, crazy woman.
Well, here,
Don't you think that might be a problem there? The fact that they see themselves as that's what they got.
oh, absolutely. Because you know what? A perfect example of this is when I look at fangirls, particularly fangirls of Harley Quinn.
Oh, God, don't bring this up, please.
Oh, no. But it is basically the heart of
I know.
of the whole problem.
Yeah.
Is Harley Quinn's an awesome character. She's done fantastic things. And if you've read her whole story arc, they've done a fantastic job building that character from a broken
It's a story about overcoming
mental
your
illness,
issues.
mental
yes.
illness.
But no one wants
But
to see
no
it
one
that
wants
way.
no one wants to focus on it. They just basically say, "Oh, Harley Quinn's awesome, yay!"
Or now the new thing is to berate the writers that tell stories about Harley and Joker. Like we can
Yes.
no longer subject characters to uncomfortable situations. Now we have to separate Joker and Harley and make sure everyone understands that this isn't relationship goals, people. This isn't healthy. No fucking duh.
No fucking duh.
We understand this isn't healthy. We understand that it's a toxic relationship
But this
between
is-
Harley and Joker. But this is reality.
This is
Why are we
reality.
running away from reality?
And this is what makes Harley into the person that we all fell in love with.
Right. It's
by
the
remo-
building blocks
by-
of her story.
By just negating and forgetting the trauma and forgetting,
She's not interesting.
the abuse.
She's not interesting. She becomes a very flat stock character. So we need these things to make stories pop.
pop.
So
And then Dennis replied to the message saying, "I read it as you were writing it. Your perspective is extremely informative. Thank you for taking time. I will say I don't think our medic is silly or crazy at all. In my mind,
on, Dennis.
she is the heroine of the story. It was not at all our intention to mock her or anyone else.
I didn't get mockery, but come on,
I
Dennis.
did.
She's not crazy.
She's not crazy.
Dude,
she
she's-
is crazy.
She's picking up bloody pieces of Vader and sticking it in a box, a trophy box. She's borderline Dexter here.
But
she's a serial killer of sorts. She has the habits, the habitual habits of collecting things. She is crazy, and this is why I get so disappointed with Dennis because again, I'm going to say it again. Dennis did a great job. And then because he's nervous of what social media can do to people,
Yes.
can destroy careers,
Yes.
you have this guy now trying to do damage control, and he's dumbing down his work. And honestly, I think he might be flat out lying. How, as a writer, you really can't see that your character was crazy. She was not the heroine. Was she the protagonist? Yes. I think heroine's the wrong word, bro.
Yeah. And that's the thing.
This is
It's
damage control, dude. That's all it is.
That right there, that message to me just solidified that was just the saddest reaction any creative writer can do to their fan base.
And it's the reason why social media sucks. Because social media bullies creators, it bullies
Exactly.
people into accepting things that weren't their intent. This is why social media sucks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we need to move on. We're staying a little too long on this.
Yeah, but it's understandable too because this is the one issue that basically took up everyone's time.
All right, so Vader, let's talk about Vader Visions, Dark Visions number 4. It's the 4th issue. Never mess with the best. That's the synopsis. We all know Darth Vader as the Emperor's Iron Fist, but as any rebel can tell you, he's also a terror and a TIE fighter. What does it feel like in that X-Wing cockpit when you're nose to nose with the Empire's deadliest pilot? Will you even live to tell the tale? All right.
And the cool thing about this one, I don't know if you got the vibe from this, is on the issue by itself, it's a very simple theme. But when you take it into context of the second one, where you actually have okay, in the second issue we had
There's
how
some-
Vader is seen
There's
on
some
his side.
there's some meat to this one as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on this one, how Vader is seen on the opposition side, how he's seen by the rebels. And both are basically driven by fear.
Yeah.
And like, but they're both different types of fear. Because on the Emperor side, everyone says, oh yeah, if we fail, we die. Here, the rebel pilot sees Vader as almost like this unattainable obstacle to be the best.
Well, it's more than that as well.
And it's more than that.
He represents a psychological obstacle to his life.
To his life.
Maybe Vader is the embodiment of that. Vader is not the one who killed his father, because that's how the story starts out. The Empire kills his father, and now the manifestation of the Empire is obviously Darth Vader. And this, to me, was another very tragic story dealing with issues of guilt and remorse, the effects of war, both physically and psychologically. Hallam uses a bookend approach to the story as well that highlights how psychological growth can become impairing at times, how a traumatic event we may experience as a child can drag us down our entire life. And guess what? If we don't deal with it, it can kill us. So it's a sad depiction of a man's promise to himself that ends in failure. Frozen, immovable due to his own fears. And this leads to his death, and I can only assume the death of the entire rebel base that he drew the Empire to.
Yes.
That's how it ends. Another depiction of how relentless Vader is. It starts with this young boy, and it ends with him as a man. And we are so used to these stories ending on happy notes. Oh, it's Star Wars. So when it ends in such a sad way,
Oh yeah.
it catches you off guard.
Because it's almost like the harsh reality.
Harsh reality.
Harsh reality hitting it.
Yep.
And again, it took a simple concept that I was mentioning and just made it bigger in scope and tackled something that is very, very tied to mental illness, is where you can use bad coping mechanisms to actually ruin your life.
Arrogance,
Overconfidence,
overconfidence.
revenge.
Yep.
All that stuff. All that stuff is basically bad coping mechanisms. People, and it's amazing to me that people don't today realize this, but there's so many motivational speakers that use these negative things to, you have to use this to make yourself better. Do this and do this. Use the negative and turn it into a positive. And normally that's a good way of seeing it. But this is an example of how taking that mentality can actually hurt you.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so let's move over to Dark Visions number 5. It's the 5th, obviously. Also written by Dennis Hallam, illustrated by Geraldo Borges. And this one came out just about a little over a month ago. Nightmare on the Outer Rim. A backwater jungle planet teeming with poisonous plants. The search for a device that can track the rebels. A psychedelic nightmare triggered. I'm at the end here, Dave. I think we need to end pretty soon. I'm falling all over my words here.
the words.
A psychedelic nightmare triggered by the local fauna with a terror known as Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Okay, this one, I really dug this one as well for a lot of reasons. I think the last 3 might be my favorite, actually, of the Dark Vision series. This one had some cool and creative imagery, much like the first issue. Due to the chosen perspective, we saw Vader through a lens of heroism in the first one.
Yes.
In this one, we got to witness Nightmare Vader.
Nightmare Vader.
Nightmare Vader. Just like Nightmare Batman or Nightmare Superman. You know, they've done those stories. You get to witness Nightmare Vader. And this was just a creative way to heighten the way many view Vader, and a great way to end the entire series, the anthology series, by highlighting and pushing forward the thought that Vader is a villain, the ultimate villain, this menacing, looming presence that will cut you down, cut down anyone in his path, and he's stalking you.
And overall, the concept of it all is Vader's power is fear. That's the thing. The whole ambiance and gravitas to Vader's character is based on everyone's fear of him. And that's partially why I do like the first one, because it was so different, because you're seeing him as a hero, right? But then as the series goes along, you're basically seeing like the effects of what Darth Vader truly is, a character that his main weapon is fear and tyranny. Like, he is a villain.
Right. And that's what I really liked, how they emphasize that. And what a great way to end the series.
It is.
They emphasize that with this whole idea of Nightmare Vader, this psychedelic trip that sends this poor sap of a dude who's running through the jungle into this downward, into the rabbit hole, like vibe or mentality that ends in his death.
A trip. It's a psychedelic trip. I mean, when he starts thinking and imagining the creatures coming back to life, and we're talking like the creatures that were on the wall, that he just sees their head, but suddenly they burst out of the wall, and it's almost like this psychedelic drug trip. And the way he imagines Darth Vader as one of those beasts, and his lightsaber is actually a living, breathing energy snake. It's such a trippy moment, and it shows that the power that Darth Vader has is that fear that's so strong. That's what it does to a person's mentality.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, it was cool. The favorite panel or page for me was the one where Vader, it's towards the end of issue 5, and Vader is this big monstrosity, this beast with fangs, and he's reaching out with claws. And he just says, "Give it to me." And even the word bubble reflects this nightmarish, hellish
monster,
psychedelic trip that this guy is going through. And it's such a great way to end the series.
And the thing I want to ask you, because it's a very cool thing that a couple of people online were talking about. Do you think Darth Vader actually killed him, or was it his fear that actually killed him? Because if you think about it, if you look at those last 2 pages, Vader says, "Give it to me."
Yeah.
The guy throws it at Vader, and Vader basically is just standing there. Doesn't have his lightsaber drawn, doesn't have anything, but he walks away, and the guy is still on the ground in the fetal position.
And his eyes are open.
And are all open.
Yeah.
And I'm like going, did Darth Vader kill him, or did the guy's actual fear, his own mind, killed him?
Yeah. Who knows? But I like how it ended. It didn't. Not everything needs to be explained, especially in a story that's very psychedelic. Sometimes the best way to end a psychedelic story is open-ended. It's kind of like the Twilight Zone. Mm-hmm. Why are some of the best Twilight Zones open-ended? Why are some of the best X-Files episodes open-ended? It's because it's a journey into nightmarish territory, and sometimes knowing that there is no resolve leaves that fear there just a bit more.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because even in my notes that I wrote for this particular issue, it's very Twilight Zone-ish. I'm glad that you actually saw that too, because I'm like going, this reminds me of, like, you know, those Twilight Zone episodes where the character is just laying there fetal position and crying.
Yeah, sometimes I like to lay in the fetal position and cry. Makes me feel good. At the end of the day, I just get in the shower, let the hot water hit me, and all my problems go away.
But it reminded me
David, don't gloss over that. It's a cry for help, Dave.
Cry for help?
How dare you? Go ahead.
But it reminded me of the William Shatner Twilight Zone episode. How that ended.
There's something on the
There's
wing.
something on the wing. And like at the very end,
something on the wing.
He's like literally screaming, and you get this idea that basically, oh, he's just driven so mad that basically he's dead at this point.
Yeah.
And that's the vibe I got at the end of this, was like, oh, he's William Shatner.
All right, so we need to wrap this up, Dave. Give me your final thoughts in a nutshell. We've already gone through all this, and we're crossing over that 60-minute mark. So go ahead.
My final thoughts on Vader Dark Visions. I was very caught off guard by this series. As I said, had zero expectations of it, but quite honestly, this score is higher than I thought. I was expecting it to score, say, in the 70 range, but I would honestly give this series a 85. 85.
Are we rating these now?
I guess
we're supposed to, huh?
That's how I've been doing it.
All right, Dave. I will give this. You know what? I'm going to skip this percentage because I didn't even really think about it, but I did highly enjoy the series way more than I had thought. I'm kind of glad the controversy happened. Otherwise, I would not have picked up the issue, even though I hate the controversy and I don't agree with it. It's silly.
Yeah.
But if it didn't happen, I probably wouldn't have decided to read these.
I honestly, in retrospect, I think that's what is the negative of that's what brings my score down on this comic, is because, like, the message that he had the potential to actually say got lost.
Yeah, I agree. And please, Dennis, if you happen to listen to this, don't think we're hating, bro. We love you. In fact,
he's a really good
reach
writer.
out. Let's do an interview. Let's do it. I would love to interview him and get his real thoughts on everything.
Oh, absolutely, because
this is a safe place. This studio is a safe place.
It's a safe place.
And also, his comic issue inspired this fantastic use of fun music. All right, let's end the show. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, David.
May the force be with us.